All right, we're live. Good morning, everybody. Hope everyone's kind of rested. I heard a lot of activity late last night when I was taking breaks from working on the talk. There was a lot of folks up late. Myself, I don't normally do this sort of thing this early in the morning, so I got up real early also to get caffeinated and ready to go. So if I go quickly, it's because I'm super excited and highly amped up. Super caffeinated, yeah. So, introductions a little bit. My name is Pax. I'm the Chief Technology Officer for the Winston Preparatory School. It's a New York City-based system of schools at this point. Started as a New York City school, and we've been expanding rather aggressively. And we teach kids that learn differently from other kids. This is my colleague Gahl. He's our Director of Technology at our prettiest campus, I would say.
Nice. Wow.
Yeah.
It only took a conference for you to compliment the campus.
So the Connecticut campus is nestled up in the woods in this beautiful rocky country territory in Norwalk, Connecticut. And we have been with Winston basically the same amount of time. And we've been on this sort of growth trajectory and path of change for the past several years. In terms of background, I started off like a lot of Mac admins as an audio engineer, sort of. That's where I was trained and where I started spending time around computers, which was super fun. And then I moved to New York City around the time that Apple was launching their first flagship retail store. So the first kind of large-scale store in Soho, New York City, which was a great place to be. I was part of that launch team, and it was just the intersection of, Apple's always talking about the liberal arts and technology. It was very much that. You would have actors and theater producers and musicians and artists of every type, filmmakers in the store. And so we, as a team, not only learned the technology and learned a lot of things about Apple's philosophy, which are kind of still true to this day, but we were exposed to a lot of different ways of using technology, and education was part of that as well. You want to talk about how you ended up with Winston?
Sure. So, hi again. I'm Gahl. I worked in an investment bank for about 15 years doing, I started as a tech support guy, and then I ended up being a sort of liaison between an accounting division and private equity and software developers. And I don't know how many people here are familiar with corporate America, but it really wears on you after a while. So after I had my fill, I took a break from that, and as luck would have it, my wife had been with Winston Prep at that point for a good 5 or 6 years, and they had opened the Connecticut branch, and I got very familiar with their faculty over the years, and when they heard that I was available, they snatched me up, and now I'm a director of technology there, and I also teach a math class, I run a music program, I do the yearbook. We wear many hats in Winston in general, not just Connecticut. We wear a lot of hats, all of us.
Yeah, small team, and I guess we're ambitious.
To say the least.
So a little bit about the school. Winston Prep's sort of guiding mission is to facilitate the independence and meaningful participation of our students that have specific learning disorders, and we use this continuous feedback system to develop those skills. It's sort of a process where you're continuously analyzing where you're at, coming up with a plan to address what you see, and then implementing that response in real time. And so we do that with students by essentially having a custom teaching path. It's unique in a couple of ways. The core thing is that we have what's called the focus program. It's a period every single day that every single student goes to and spends it one-on-one with the same teacher. They're paired with a teacher for the entire year. So they're one-on-one every day for an entire class period with this focus teacher. And that person coordinates pretty much all the aspects of that student's path through their educational career. It's pretty intense. You've taught
Yeah,
focus.
actually, before I was the tech guy, I actually was a focus teacher as well. And I mean, the types of students that we get, they can range from, students that have difficulty with executive functioning or social emotional issues, dyslexia. I mean, we really have the full range of types of students. And as Pax was saying, we group them by learning profile, and that way they have people that are similar to themselves in the classroom, and it also helps the teacher, kind of to deal with one type of learning profile at a time. And the focus instructor essentially works with the student to help them to sort of interpret different things during the day, whether it's what they've learned in class or an interaction they had with other students, or how to line up the order in which they should work on a project or that evening's homework. But it's a great thing for these kids. I mean, it's really assistive, to say the least.
And that thing that you just mentioned really deserves emphasis. We group our kids by the way they learn. So that means it's not by grade and it's not by age. It's by learning style and where they're at in terms of level. So you can have a learning group, a teaching group, that has 2 or 3, maybe even sometimes 4 grades, like traditional
That's right,
grades. But they're all sort of at the same place, so they're taught together and they go through their day together, learning all the different subjects. So focus and the way we group are probably the 2 things that set us the most apart. And then that focus teacher also has a heavy involvement with getting the technology into the hands of the students. So we're going to take you through kind of a 5-chapter story of how we used to do technology, what motivated us to come on board, what we needed to change, some of the misses we've had along the way, where we ended up, and sort of where we think we're going. There we go. So we'll start with kind of the origin story here. So when we got to Winston, we had pretty primitive technology.
Primitive.
Connecticut had not been open very long. So we were a New York City-based school with this satellite campus. We had, you guys remember Xserves? We had some Xserves in a basement closet running Open Directory, but not really being used. Our approach to device management was not to manage them. We call this purchase and release because that's basically what would happen. We would order, 40 MacBook Pros, and the technology person would sit with the person that was going to receive the machine, have them set up an account, maybe write down a password or do something that would be frowned upon. But that was it. And then you would basically not necessarily touch the machine again until it was time for its end of cycle. So you would have users that would keep their machines up to date. You'd have users that would never do anything, and really the technology team would only ever touch them if something broke.
Right,
pretty
or the new OS came out.
Yeah, and even then it was far from uniform. So you'd end up with 3, 4, 5 OSs.
Very fragmented.
Very fragmented. And because we were doing things like writing down passwords, and the users would be administrators of the machines with no real rules, we had people with no passwords, no screen locks, passwords written down on pieces of paper, passwords written on a whiteboard.
Oh, that's totally possible. Yeah.
Stuff like that. Our management style at Winston was to manage everything by email. That would include the opening of the Connecticut campus, annual fundraising events, student trips, no real tools. So additionally, we had these location-based issues where everything was based in our New York City campus. So on premises, we had this thing called First Class, which was, anyone ever heard of that? Wow.
Do you guys, I don't think they make it anymore though, right? It's been out for a while. Yeah.
Veterans of first class. We should chat after. So first class, it was a system that did an email with some modifications to what you would think of as normal email, calendar, and kind of discussions, like a forum and a chat room kind of combined.
Yeah.
And we would have a discussion area for each student. That's kind of why we used it. But that was based in New York City, in the IT closet. And what else do we have? We had our FileMaker server there as well. We use FileMaker as what most schools would consider a student information system, but none of the off-the-shelf stuff like PowerSchool or any of those really work for us because of the way we group our students. They're all very grade-based, and none of them have a focus program, so
Correct.
tricky. We also had our business office in the main New York City building, running basic local accounting software server. And the problem with all of these, whether it was email or the databases or the accounting software or your basic storage, an Xserve with a few terabytes of hard drives sitting there. The problem with all of it is it was pretty good performance when you were in the building on the local network, but Connecticut was, an hour away with the best internet connection they could get.
Which was not good at the time. It was bad.
Tunneling back into the to New York City closet. So performance issues were common. Outages were common. You were completely reliant on us.
And in case you guys didn't catch it, PAX dubbed us Neglecticate.
Oh, that's right. We affectionately started referring to them as Neglecticate because that's how they felt.
Yes.
It wasn't intentional. So another problem was we had two separate phone systems. The same way that Penn State would have a phone system, and I don't know, the theater downtown would have a phone system. They were completely unintegrated. So we're really collaborative, and everyone from Connecticut, essentially, had come from New York. So colleagues would want to talk to each other and discuss, techniques and strategies and approaches. And we had all this friction because you would have to get an outside line, make the phone call to the campus, ask for the extension, hopefully get connected, and finally have your conversation. But we had no technology to help with this. We had no conference ability, really.
Not really.
You could either go into the one room that had a phone, or you could use our one sort of conference line. That was not very good. We had no virtual meetings at all. We did start to dabble with, GoToMeeting and all that kind of stuff, but we didn't have the networks to really support it. So again, performance issues. So we had no ability to get everyone together also. There are occasions where you would want to have, say, the leadership teams from both the campuses gather and talk about all the things that were going on in Winston land, and that was pretty much impossible.
Yeah, considering, communication is the core of what we do with our continuous feedback system, it's kind of funny that we had difficulty communicating.
Yeah, and all the phone struggles, what they really did was they increased even more the reliance on the one tool that we did have, which was email.
Right.
So it just made that email that much more critical. And that is what it made us feel like.
Yeah, that was us. We just curled up in some corner.
So that was our way of operating. We were very New York-centric. We were dependent on that campus to run our second campus. And we had just started the school year in 2012.
I think, it was the 12-13 year.
When Hurricane Sandy happened. And somebody, so New York had a few new lakes, and one of those lakes ended up in our server room.
Literally.
Someone had located that server room in the basement of that building. I don't know if that was the greatest idea. We might have been okay, if not for that, but it was terrible. It was this complete system failure. Everything ground to a total stop, and it was you couldn't do anything. We couldn't do anything. You couldn't even look up phone numbers and email addresses if you wanted to communicate with a family or get an email. You basically had to.
You have to hope you printed something
Yeah,
sometime.
you had to go find a teacher that might have that family's contact information.
Right. Email was down,
Yeah,
essentially.
and this was for, oh God, I want to say like 7 or 8 days.
Yeah, it was bad.
It was a long time. So we were dead in the water. We had no way to operate independently or otherwise. So it was an awful experience, but the silver lining to it was that's the moment when we were catalyzed to make changes. That's when we were brought on board to grow us into something way different than what we had been. So meanwhile, because Connecticut had been so successful as a school, Winston was energized to take the approach that was working really well and try to help more kids in more places. So we were basically queuing up expansion plans and needed to change technology top to bottom. So we started with, the following year, a new campus in New Jersey, about an hour away. And in preparation for that, we rolled out Google's G Suite. Basically took the place of several of the systems that had been in the New York closet, put it in the cloud, made it much more reliable and no single point of failure. The next campus we opened was our transitions campus. It's right on Madison Avenue, right in the heart of Manhattan. This is an interesting one. It's post-high school. It's a 1 to 3 year program where kids that need a little extra help moving to the next stage of their life, they can go there. And it focuses on internships, guided internships. So they're placed in locations that cater to their skill sets, and then it's all monitored, and they do that until they move on to a vocation. Some of them take the extra time, an extra year or two to prep and end up going to college. It's even more individualized in a way.
Right. The focus program we had mentioned earlier continues in the transition program as well.
Correct. So when that campus opened, we tied all of our phones together, finally. We went voice over IP. Now a teacher can pick up a phone on Madison Avenue and call Gahl in his office in Connecticut with 4 digits, and there's no friction there. And also, as we started scaling, we started using real project management tools instead of email for everything. Our next growth was all of our business office and development team and technology was taking up space in the main campus, so we opened an administrative office, tied that all together as well. G Suite phones, started adding video meetings, and started doing video meetings between the 4 locations at that point.
So mind you guys, we essentially inherited a very antiquated system, and then we were struck by Hurricane Sandy, and then on top of that,
And then, by the way,
our faithless leaders decided, well, let's just start branching out and building new areas as well. So it was daunting to say the least, and we had to do this all within like a year or two.
Yeah, it was basically
it was a lot.
Launch some new technology, open a campus. Launch some new technology, open a campus, open a site. Moved all the databases, all the accounting software, moved all that to the cloud. And then the next location is Long Island. That opened a year ago, so we're getting into more recent history. And the big initiative there was to start centrally doing device management. Macs, iPads,
Apple TV.
Chromebooks, Apple TVs, all of it. And now we are sending people out west to do some feasibility studies out in California, doing a West Coast Winston. And we're basically trying to get all the technology pieces deployed to make that happen. Our first remote workers started happening as well. So basically everything, you can access anything Winston from anywhere, pretty much.
That's right.
And it's all centrally managed at this point. So we'll go into some of the details on that in a bit. But along the way, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but sometimes schools can be a little resistant to change.
A little resistant.
We ran into some of that. So we had a lot of transition problems. Probably the biggest one is you guys that have experienced first class know it's pretty unique, and it's one sort of product and environment, whereas G Suite is this whole cluster of things that's not just email and discussion boards and calendaring, but chat and Office Suite and all these fun things. So people struggle with that, from going from, even though it wasn't a good app experience or a good environment, they were very used to it, and there was a lot of resistance to moving to something different. What did I call it the other day? The technology Stockholm syndrome.
That's right.
Like, they become friends with their captor. So we spent about a year and a half really getting people used to everything Google.
I can say from experience, though, that a large majority of the teachers, though, once they got used to G Suite, I mean, they were blown away by how much easier things were.
Yeah.
I mean, I had a couple of users that were very resistant to change and very set in their ways, and they couldn't believe how much easier it made their experiences teaching in classrooms and working with their students. So
we had a couple of speed bumps also with device management, in particular Mac management. So we went from, the buy and release school of management, zero touch in the non-good way. So then we went with what the kind of Apple recommended way to do stuff was. We did system imaging. And so people didn't like that much, because they were able to be very independent with their computers before. They were not managed at all, and we had all sorts of troubleshooting overhead because of it, but they really resisted the inconvenience of imaging, the having to back up, have your computer erased, put all your stuff back. We were trying to do it annually to keep everyone on what had become Apple's annual software release schedule. They did not like that. And we did start, we got a little more relaxed about it, but it didn't ever, they didn't ever love it. But what we got out of it was we got some standard settings, we got a little bit better, we got much better distribution of applications. You can make sure that like the FileMaker app would be on a computer, or the virtual meeting app. So it helped with some of the security considerations. We could lock some things down. We implemented admin accounts just for us. But then we got a lot of resistance about that too. We were able to remotely help people because we would open up SSH and give remote access to ourselves.
It really kind of creeped people out when
Yeah.
they saw that we could control their cursor from another building. So it's a little 1984 for them, I think.
Yeah, a little bit. But it was good, but it set the stage for phase 2 of sort of Mac management, which kind of started 2 years ago. Apple was basically saying imaging was going to be dead. If you guys were here and paying attention to the Apple sessions, they were pretty clear about it. So we started looking at new tools, MDM systems, stuff like that. We needed to take our Mac management up a level, and we needed to make it a little easier on our people. So we came here last year and ended up talking to the guys from Fleet Smith, which we call MDM Plus. I think of it as MDM Plus because it's far more than that. It's a great system. We've been super happy with it. You can manage apps individually. They have a whole catalog, and it really has changed the way we do security. We can enforce things without having backdoors. having the admin accounts without people feeling like we're spying on them. But even Fleetsmith, people were leery of. They felt like, are you going to be able to watch me? We spent a lot of time explaining that actually no, we're giving you more privacy and we're getting out of your systems. And so,
does anybody here use Fleetsmith? You should seriously consider it.
Wonderful product.
Yeah, it really.
So we've been with them
great.
for about a year. So where have we ended up? Where are all the tools and stuff that we use these days? So we're so heavily into G Suite now that it is essentially our de facto directory system. Most of the cloud-based tools we use at this point authenticate against the Google accounts that all of our people have. And we use G Suite for students too, but they have more limited access. But all of our faculty, teachers in each campus, all of the remote workers, all of the people in the administrative office, everyone's on Google. We have completely centralized device management at this point. For the Macs, we were paying attention when Apple launched Apple School Manager and said, it's not quite ready yet. And then we were paying attention when they said, okay, now go and use it. So that's Apple Business Manager if you're not a school. And that's what led us to Fleetsmith. And then for iPads and Apple TVs, we ended up with, I screwed up the animation there. Sorry.
No, that was right.
Ended up with Mosel. And then we rolled out a whole bunch of Chromebooks, which are rather nicely managed actually in the Google admin console.
Yeah, the majority is for student use because all our students are online as well. But recently we started rolling them out to some faculty as well, and it's great.
So we had sort of solved device security, but then we had this giant issue with password security. So we took a product a couple of us have been using at home on our computers, on our phones, and got on board with 1Password, who they do an amazing job of not just managing passwords, but doing it for teams specifically. You can manage buckets of passwords and determine what people can and can't do with them. We actually recently had a departure from someone that had access to a lot of passwords, and it was really nice to be able to just flip a switch and know that all that was nice and secure and accessible. Again, Fleetsmith is part of our security posture because it's keeping all the data that we actually store on Macs nice and safe. And we rolled out two-step verification system-wide for pretty much every account that we could. We talked a little bit about project management and asset management earlier. We dove pretty deeply into Asana. Anybody use Asana here? Yeah.
Do you like it?
It's funny. I think it's hard to get people to be excited about project management tools as a general thing. Yeah, they're almost always forced on you, and they're frequently pretty cumbersome. But we started using Asana in the technology department just to keep our sanity, basically. We were so successful with it, honestly, that now we're doing, not only do we open campuses every year or two, but we tend to renovate an existing campus in the off years. So we're doing these renovation products. We're planning our fundraisers. We're doing hiring with our HR departments, all through Asana. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's almost like a collaboration tool on top of it. That's why it was a pleasant experience. And it's a great way to just track the status of what you're doing, and you can put notes in there, and it's great because you can refer back to it if you encounter some random situation in 3 years and you say, I remember when we did that in 2012. and we could just look it up and we can see what our solution was, and it's pretty fantastic.
Yep, it's really great, and it's also tightly integrated with Google Drive. So if you're already using Google for storage, then you can just kind of put everything in one little bucket. You don't have to go back to your inbox and try to find that email from 2014. A couple other points on the security front. I don't know if you guys noticed, but we had a little bit of a Zoom issue this week. To the point where I read late last night when we were coming back from the mountain that even Apple had deployed a fix. So that was dramatic.
That's got to tell you something.
Yeah. The Fleetsmith guys solved that very immediately for us before Apple ever got involved. It was really refreshing to get an email from them saying that, this is exactly what's happened, this is what we're doing to address it, and we went back to having beers.
Yeah, we didn't have to do anything. That was the best part because well, you can tell them why.
Well, just when you're in IT and you get an email or a phone call or a text from someone at the very top of your organization, it always feels like you're about to have to do something and have a bad day. And we didn't.
And it was just great because the Fleetsmith guys basically not only were extremely informative and were on top of communicating with their clients, they handle patch management. And so long as our users were running Zoom and they had the Fleetsmith client, I mean, they literally told us there was nothing to do. They pushed it automatically. Yeah. So it was great. We basically had to do nothing.
We really had to do nothing. But we were also geared up to do something from our end, thanks to Fleetsmith. Did anyone go to the Google Santa presentation earlier this week? Anyone know about it? So Fleetsmith gives you a way to leverage Santa without having to do any of the implementation details. So we were, while the situation was developing, we were considering, hey, maybe we should block Zoom on all of our computers. So we could have done that. We were poised to do that, but instead we just relaxed.
Yeah,
nice.
I mean, they offered for lack of a better term, a user interface as opposed to command line. Mm-hmm. So once you had the hashes that you needed, you just pop it in and it sets it up for you. So
no additional backend.
In case you haven't noticed, we're plugging Fleetsmith pretty hard, but they've been great to us. It's really helped us out in countless ways.
Yeah, I don't think we could do what we do without them. Or Asana. And let's see, we moved all of our inventory and stuff to Airtable.
Anybody familiar with Airtable?
Excellent. It's like a hybrid of a spreadsheet and a database that you can do just about anything with. And all of this stuff is 100% cloud-based. And everyone here uses Slack, so we do as well.
We were trying to decide last night if we should talk about Slack at all.
We were like,
and Pac said if people here don't know what Slack is,
yeah,
they probably wouldn't be here.
I presume there's a Slack room for this room. Nice. So what else? So with all of this stuff that we rolled out, we achieved location parity, basically. We just decentralized everything. If any one campus has an outage, it has no effect on the others. Obviously, I'm just kind of rehashing some of the tools. Virtualized database, running in an AWS server, FileMaker on it, hosted accounting, storage with Google Drive, backups with Amazon Glacier.
I mean, it's pretty incredible to think that when we started, basically the entire tech world lived in a room in the basement of a building in New York, and now it's in the cloud.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fantastic.
And none of this stuff, even the best of it, is particularly advanced. Like we don't do anything custom. We don't build anything ourselves. Nope. But the collection of tools that we use and the way that it's decentralized and put in the cloud, like really helps us because when we find out we're opening a campus, we don't have a lot of lead time,
No.
And frequently, these campuses, the Connecticut campus is a beautiful LEED certified building sitting in a wooded area next
LEED
to
Platinum certified.
LEED Platinum certified, first in the state of
We're very
Connecticut,
proud.
actually. So that's beautiful. But some of our smaller campuses, these are shorter term leases, and there's no IT closet. You couldn't do servers there if you wanted to. So never mind. So via integrated phones, voice over IP calling, direct dialing. We do use Zoom a lot.
And almost didn't for a second there.
Yeah. So we were nervous this week when that was all going down. I would say that I think I legitimately spend 15 to 20 hours on Zoom a week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He tends to travel a lot, being the CTO. So Zoom's become like his mobile office, for lack of a better term.
Yeah. Last week I was fortunate enough to have my office at the beach. Zoom helped with that.
Yeah. My office is in my office.
Yes. We frequently have cross-campus meetings, and that literally can be 6 different locations or more at this point, with the ability to do remote tech support and have all sorts of collaboration stuff. Professional development, interviews for hiring, guest speakers. We do webinars. It's
And
pretty great.
it's pretty seamless too. I mean, it's a good product also. I mean, we can have so many different locations and so many different participants, and the quality really rarely falters. Obviously, it's dependent on the quality of your connection, but
It's all
in
because of the
general,
web server they're running on your machine.
we don't talk about these things.
I get to ding Zoom. So where are we going at this point? We have a simple collection of really reliable tools now that we feel really comfortable with. We're expanding across 3 different time zones, I think. We shipped our first couple of computers out west, and they auto-configured themselves. It was pretty fantastic.
I was too busy trying to remember why you said 3 time zones. But then I remembered the United States has 3 time zones.
On-premises phone systems are great, and they're all tied together, but probably the next step is to rip it all out and do cloud phones. Zoom has a nice cloud phone product, but we're gonna see how that goes.
We're going to have to think about that one.
Yeah, we don't currently do device management for BYOD devices that people bring in, so we're probably going to move to that. We are meeting now with a development company to talk about taking what we currently have in FileMaker and redoing the entire database and putting it into a serverless database as a service structure, probably with either Amazon or Google, and generally trying to take the location independent, geography independent approach even further. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Google's Beyond Core, but their strategy is more it's more about basically trusting no networks, even the ones on your property that you control. So assuming every network is hostile and taking security decisions and access to the device level, to the user level, about a device being able to prove that it is what it is, and a person be able to authenticate as who they are and prove it, and what role they occupy. So that's kind of where we're going. Now that we've been here a couple days and don't have to present anymore, we can spend the rest of today and tomorrow kind of talking about these directions. Yeah, so that's us, and where we're at and where we're going. You guys have any questions? It's not fancy, but it's
It works real well.
I get to talk to a lot of other schools, and there's always questions about how we do stuff. Oh, we should throw that.
So you guys said that you rolled out two-step authentication with Google G Suite.
Yes.
Can you talk about how that went down, how you made that happen, and what your second factor tends to be?
Yeah, so as far as what the second factor is, we started with the lowest of requirements. We basically let them do whatever factor they want. We started the rollout about a year ago. We were opening the Long Island campus, and so we had the opportunity to, as we brought those users on board, we had an organizational unit within G Suite that we just went ahead and made it a requirement. So as the accounts were created and people set them up, I think we gave them a week.
Possibly 2 weeks.
Yeah, maybe 2
Like
weeks.
new users would have around 2 weeks to,
Yeah, so
to
we-
do it, otherwise they would get locked out. Like we were very strict about it.
Yeah, we just let Google kind of pester them. It was a trickier, more political kind of thing to go back and get the people that hadn't had it set up. You probably could speak to that better than me.
Yeah, I'm pretty ruthless with my with my user base. I really
He just locks them all in a room.
No, really. I mean, like, not to bring up Fleetsmith again, but the week we started, I pushed it out to everybody in one meeting.
Mm-hmm.
But we were discussing the two-step authentication for Google, and I kind of took the same stance. I enabled it for the entire faculty OU group, and I think I was generous in the sense that I gave them about 3 or 4 weeks. You can set a deadline of when they will get locked out if they don't enable it. And it does send out periodic reminders. And in terms of what people used as their second factor, the majority of people are just using like an SMS message to their phone. Personally, I use the Google app, where you just hit yes. It just messages you through there.
We had a few people actually ask for security keys, which I was thrilled about.
Yeah, that was a surprise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get the whole range. We get people that don't want to be bothered with anything, and then we actually do have a few people that are pretty forward thinking. So yeah, it's one of those things. It's you have to have the organizational will to do it, and then you kind of have to have a people plan, because that's the real trick.
And then after the fact, how do your users think about it now?
I think they're pretty happy with it. We let them, remember the device, so they, like on a particular web browser, they rarely have to provide the second factor. It's mostly, if they get, get a new phone or hop on a loaner computer or something like that. But we haven't really had any complaints, honestly. Surprisingly so, because we have a very vocal population.
Yeah. I mean, just to reiterate, yeah, like the devices that we've assigned to people, we've allowed them to set it up that it's a remembered browser. But exactly, it's more for if they're visiting somebody or they're at some remote location using a hotel computer or something like that.
Yeah. We spend a lot of time thinking about the timeline that we roll out changes. We probably will increase the security requirements at some point, but, they had a lot of changes.
Yeah, I think this year might run a little cooler than the past year.
Yeah. And then, we're also going to be opening we're renovating 2 locations this year, and might be opening 1 or 2 campuses next year. So, any other general questions or educational questions? Yeah. Oh, make sure we get
Thank you.
the mic.
Are you doing all file storage on Google Drive at this point? Are people keeping files local? And if so, for Google Drive, are you doing the agent, or are you directing everyone to the website?
So that's actually a really great question. It's interesting.
The answer is yes.
The answer is basically yes. We pretty much have everything in Google Drive. So our 2 main buckets of data are our databases, and then we actually, because not everyone accesses those, like Focus Teacher and given campus may not bother with FileMaker. So we have per student clusters of information in Google Drive, and we have per department. We have huge presence there, and it was getting a little cumbersome. But then they rolled out the Google Drive file stream, which was a huge improvement for us. We find that, people with the old system, with the old app, were filling up the SSDs on their computers and having all sorts of storage problems. And that, just as a side note, that's the only time we ever have issues keeping software up to date using Fleetsmith, is when the computers get super full, like if there's no room to push the update out, and so they just kind of stall. So we occasionally have a little remote Zoom troubleshooting to get people to empty their downloads folder and stuff like that. But yeah, we are primarily, because of FileStream, I think we were kind of weighing some other storage options, but once that happened,
I think it's become a more of an understanding that any of the business-related things they're doing, to be sure to save it in Google Drive. And obviously, if they're using Google Docs or Google Sheets or something, it automatically saves it in Drive. I mean, they have the ability to save things locally. I mean, don't tell my boss, but I do it too. I put stuff on my desktop. If I'm presenting in a class, sometimes you just want to have something locally. But again, there's an understanding amongst the faculty that it's very dangerous to do that, in the sense that if your computer blows up, there goes all your information. Yeah. So I think it was just more learning how to operate.
Is there any HIPAA concerns? Do you guys deal with that from a student perspective, really?
No, we really dodge it. Not actively, but we're fortunate enough to not have to worry about it too much. Yeah, that would definitely complicate the decision making. And also, it's worth noting that we have faculty now on Chromebooks, so they are using Google Drive straight on the web, and the performance has gotten pretty good on the nicer Chromebooks. So they've been pretty successful. For some of our people, handing them a Mac is like, asking them to juggle chainsaws. It's just too much going on.
Juggle chainsaws.
Yeah, it's a little. It keeps them focused sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's dependent also on what they plan on doing with the unit. If they're gonna treat a Mac like a glorified Chromebook, we just give them a Chromebook.
Right. Yeah. Any others? Yeah.
Got one back there.
I really guys use Winston and
Yes.
Yeah. So
want to
we.
talk about that? Why?
Yeah. So the question is, do we use FleetSmith and Mosel? And the answer is yes. We do all of the Macs with FleetSmith, and we do Apple TVs and iPads with Mosel. And FleetSmith, we manage all those Macs centrally from basically from the admin office. It's all part of one thing. With Mosel, we have separate accounts per campus, so that they can make their own decisions about what to manage and how to manage them. We have one campus that basically sets all their TVs, Apple TVs, to conference room mode, and then another campus, they push out certain apps so that you can show movies in class that you got from iTunes, or you can run Netflix, stuff like that. Maybe Plex in the future.
Maybe.
Yeah. So we don't have a ton of iPads, but I'm sort of feeling that might change.
That's going to change. I know for Connecticut it's going to change.
Yeah.
We're going to adopt more iPads than before.
And that's partially because iPads are becoming kind of more productive machines. I'm really excited about iPadOS forking off and what it's becoming and all the extra features and attention that it's going to get. So I think we'll probably do more, but we have the management structure there to support that. It's easy now to get a box of iPads, ship them to Connecticut, and then as soon as they get connected to the internet, Mosel picks them up and
off they go.
And there they are. They're configured. So, and we're happy to talk offline about any of those: FleetSmith, Mosel, Asana, any of the products that we use. We're big fans. We usually try several things.
And by several, he means like dozens.
Yeah. We do a lot of internal R&D, so when we make a decision, we are usually pretty confident.
Yeah, and as you might notice, we tend to become very big fans of the things that we like.
Yeah.
And we really just use the hell out of them.
Yeah, well, I mean, we came here each with 2 test Macs that could be set up, blown away, erased. That's just kind of how we are all the time. Cool. Any other questions? Let's get the...
Which tool do you use to move forward from Open Directory?
We really use G Suite as our directory. We considered some other stuff. We looked at JumpCloud a couple years ago. It's a great product. It's just for the tools we use, everything ends up going back to the G Suite accounts. FleetSmith does it, Asana does it, 1Password does it. Zoom does it.
Yeah.
Like everything.
It's kind of the heart of everything we
authenticates
use.
against that system. You know, you could set up a similar. You could do like a cloud Active Directory, Azure kind of thing. But we have so few people using Office, and everyone's in G Suite. It's just kind of become our de facto directory.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
Oh.
Flip a coin. No.
Did you guys have issues? Oh, sorry. Did you have issues with the budget? Like moving from like a local server that in theory doesn't cost as much as all these additional tools that you have? Like there's that annual cost
Right.
factor. I'm just wondering, like, how did you get that culture shift to work?
Right. That's a great question. It kind of gets lost in the history that we did have a lot of those conversations and
Yeah.
a lot of opportunity to demonstrate that the solutions we were proposing were, they may look more expensive, but a lot of times they are a better value in the long run. One thing that really helps into your question, this is kind of another contributing factor to why we're so heavily into G Suite is, they provide it for free to schools. So
And it's
what we-
unlimited
unlimited
space.
storage.
Yeah, unlimited storage space, which
So that
Can't beat that.
helps a lot. A lot of the tools also, if you're a school or a nonprofit, they'll offer pretty compelling discounts. I think we do Asana for about 50% of the standard rate. Zoom, we get a discount.
Yeah.
So, that really helps.
As funny as it sounds, I think the flooded server room was a good thing in that sense, because I think the higher ups kind of realized, well, if you don't want that to happen, you may have to shell out some money, and you can't put a price tag on the security of your data.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and we're fortunate that the sort of leadership at the school, they wanted to go this direction. They sought us out
To push
to
forward.
take us in
Yeah.
a different way and think in a different way. So when we say, hey, we're gonna do this in a way that is really untraditional, not how things have been done, it's not. We don't get hit with a bunch of skepticism, really. Like, they're really interested in what it looks like, and sometimes a demonstration, and
A little
maybe
proof
some
of concept or something.
back of the envelope kind of number running. But I don't think we spend much more than we used to.
No, not really. Well, that's the funny thing is, in the end, and again, like he was saying, I think with education discounts and stuff, it's not as bad as it might seem. That being said, when it comes to budgets and stuff like that, our particular situation is not lost on us. Like, we realize how fortunate we are with the
Yep.
fact that they kind of embraced these changes and they wanted to go in this direction. So we got very lucky in that sense. But again, I think in the grand scheme, cost is not too bad.
Yeah, and we're, we approach everything looking at the cost.
Yeah, we're definitely very conscientious about
Chromebooks
that.
are a really cost-effective solution. Like, I worked for Apple. I'm very much an Apple person, and I think they're great tools. But, they're really compelling, and we're getting 3 to 4 years out of them when they're not dropped. But we're getting surprisingly good lifespan out of them before they either can't keep up on a processing level or they get sort of end of life on the support side by Google. But we have more technology in more student hands because of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what we had been doing was taking staff computers, rather comparatively expensive MacBook Pros, and handing them down to students, which was a limited pool. And, when you give a student a 4-year-old machine, they're not going to get 2 or 3 years necessarily.
And most of the time, they'll laugh at you for it.
Yeah. And performance issues and management issues and all that. And another thing is that we're a small team. We're only 5 people that run all the technology for all the campuses. So we don't have the sort of salary overhead that you might if you had a more traditional infrastructure.
Yeah, it's really impressive to me how much of our school is online, so to speak, from a faculty perspective and a student perspective. It's kind of funny too, because I'm the director of IT and I also teach a math class. And I don't use technology for the most part in my class because we tend to do paper and pen. I mean, I do projections and stuff, but I'm always jealous of like our lit teachers, our language skills, because they're using Google Classroom, which doesn't quite lend itself as much to math, but
Yeah.
but it's just nice. It's a good combination of the Macs and the Chromebooks, and everything's cloud-based. I mean, and the nice part, by the way, for any of you who work at schools, once it's cloud-based, the whole "my dog ate my homework" doesn't come into play anymore. You can't lose your assignment at that point.
You can't even lose your device because it's all in the cloud, and we'll just hand you a new device.
Yeah, here you go. So just log in.
You get some neat. It's fun to walk around the campuses. You get some neat collaborative demonstrations going on. Like it's fun to walk by a classroom, and a teacher's got a document up on the board, and you've got like 5 or 6 students in the document doing
Making
editing
changes at the
different
same
parts
time.
at the same time in
Yeah.
real time. So it's pretty fun.
I think we had one more question.
Yeah.
You guys were talking about using Google Drive or Google itself as your identity provider. Are you using that to attach accounts to computers, or is it really just single sign-on for all the other services, or how's that kind of shaping out?
It's mostly kind of single sign-on for other services, but on the Macs, Fleetsmith goes and talks to G Suite, gets that identity, and then makes a local account based off that.
Are those passwords in sync, or is that kind of separate?
They're not.
They're not. Yeah.
What it does is it makes a generated password for the Mac, and then the folks either keep it or change
They have
it
the
up.
ability to, but it's not something we enforce. Yeah.
Yeah.
Automatically.
Exactly. No, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, it's one of those things where we, it'd kind of be nice to have it be a little more synchronized, but the amount of effort that would go into it at this point we haven't been able to justify it. So.
I try to put a positive spin on it and consider it better security.
Yeah.
So one of the things that come to mind when you put more and more in the cloud is your internet links. And that becomes the potentially single point of failure. Can you guys talk about what you're doing for internet connectivity, redundancy, fault tolerance, speed?
Yeah, we have sort of in the background while we've been rolling all this out and getting more cloud-centric, we have done a lot of internet upgrading.
I'm literally in the process.
Yeah, he
Like
is.
literally in the process.
Connecticut's the last campus, but when we were just the main campus in New York and the single satellite campus, we had some issues where we had basically a single Time Warner cable connection. Business class, it is not. They left us high and dry. We were kind of disconnected for a couple of weeks. I mean, we had a little bit of connectivity. We ended up having to splice in a cellular modem on the roof of the building to have connectivity. It was bad. So where we're at now is we have redundant fiber lines at every location.
Okay.
Yeah.
Same company, same provider, or different providers?
No, it's so regional
Yeah.
that the vendors that you can get at each location are different. So every time we're at a new spot, I mean, even I guess the New York City, like the Manhattan campuses use the same stuff. But even Long Island is like completely different.
That's right.
Like, how about speeds though? Like, are you guys basically analyzing your requirements and upgrading as needed, or are you getting like
Gigabit internet to start with, and obviously that's enough.
Right.
We are.
I mean, I can
Yeah,
speak
talk
to
about
Connecticut.
it, 'cause Connecticut's in the process here.
When I first took over, we had a cable modem that was doing maybe 50 down and 10 up. And that worked for a while. And then once we started doing all the Chromebooks, and I mean, obviously the traffic boosted incredibly. So then we got bumped up to around 200 or 300 down and maybe 50 up. And that's actually where we stayed. But we never had any redundancy going on. And obviously that's not a good thing. So we've been shopping around different fiber vendors. The problem for us in specific is that we are literally a campus with multiple buildings. And we'll talk to maybe a third-party broker for different, fiber companies. And they'll always say, oh yeah, no problem, X amount of dollars, we'll get it to you. And then they'll come to do a site survey, and they'll say, wow, this is totally different, because they just assumed they're just going to run a line into a building, not realizing our first building is, 1,000 feet off the road.
Through
so we have to-
soil that is entirely like boulders, basically.
Yeah, literally. We're on a road called West Rocks Road, and it's literally boulders.
It's beautiful. It's just not fun to tunnel
No,
through.
yeah, from a construction perspective, it's not so beautiful.
Yeah.
But so we're in the midst of coming up with a solution where, when our campus was undergoing renovations, they built conduits underground. But now they have to do, like, I think he called them like inner ducts, where they run like a conduit within a conduit. So it's a little complicated. But I mean, to your point, I mean, we are going to end up with a fiber line. I don't know the speed yet, but I mean, it'll be at least 300, 400. I don't think we need gigabit. As
Gradable to, at least to a gig, I'm sure that,
Exactly.
they'll just have different price points for whatever you want to spend, I'm sure.
Right. And I think in some of the campuses, we run them concurrently so that you take advantage of both connections, and then there's a failover if one fails.
Yeah, we aggregate them together. The New York campus is gigabit. It's not, when we rolled out fiber, I think we were only at 300 or 400. But then they essentially gave us the upgrade. So in that location, we have fiber coming in from 2 different locations. So if someone's digging up the sidewalk somewhere, you don't break both lines. And then all the newer campuses, the newer locations, Long Island, stuff like that, we just went in knowing that we were going to need 2 connections. And at least one has to be fiber. Question back there if you want to toss the...
Oh. I didn't realize our session was going to be a violent one.
And that almost took out a drink, too.
No, I wasn't sleek.
Two different questions
'Kay.
related. One, a lot of redundant fiber links we've discovered around North Carolina mean that, yes, it's 2 different pieces of fiber in the same conduit for the last 500 feet. And also, have you gone to a unified or single vendor in-house networking stack structure, or is it every campus doing their own thing, or every building doing their own thing, or?
It's a good question.
Also great questions. So we try whenever possible to have the connections, whether they're fiber or cable or whatever, coming in at different physical points in the building. There's they always join up kind of by the networking rack, but New York is 2 separate locations. You're going to be 2 separate locations.
No, well, we're going with the inner duct.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's, if I had some dynamite to blow up some of the rocks, maybe we take another path. We recognize that that's not the most optimal solution, but sometimes, you can only do what you can do.
But a backhoe isn't going to be digging up your rocks.
Right, that's right. I mean,
Right.
for what it's worth,
Right.
along those lines, I mean, we did and we still are looking into a satellite solution, just as some other type of backup.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and then networking hardware, we're kind of at a crossroads here. So when we built that fancy building in Connecticut, we had a local phone vendor come in and do all the networking, all the wired stuff for both the phones and the data. So we let them architect that. It performed really well.
Really well, yeah.
And then we let them basically redo all the other campuses or open all the other campuses. We actually manage the Wi-Fi.
Right.
We didn't.
They
put it
kind
in
of do the
here.
initial setup, and then we kind of take over, but
Yeah.
they're available on a support level.
Yeah, but in terms of the structure, it's all the same, and we outsource it. It's that same thing where, 6 campuses, 5 people. It's just we can't do it in house really. So, and then if we open a campus in California, obviously that same company's not going to do it. So
I mean, you never know.
I mean, they would be willing to.
I think they'd be willing to. I don't know if we could afford to at that point.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll probably try to keep it real similar though.
But also to answer your other question, I mean, the setups are pretty much the same, I think,
Yeah.
on all campuses in terms of sonic walls, things like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think we try to make a pretty uniform setup
Yeah.
in all the closets.
Yep. True story. Yeah, and I don't know if anyone cares, but the Wi-Fi we use is AeroHive. It's pretty great cloud managed stuff.
I'm actually surprised we didn't.
Yeah,
We
no,
didn't
it was on the
include that.
list of things to put on in the presentation, but
Yeah, they're entirely cloud-based. I don't know if anybody here knows AeroHive, but they're really solid.
yeah, good stuff. I think that they're I wish their support could sometimes be a little easier to get to, but we manage that because if you need to add an SSID or something like that and you're nowhere near a location, it's really nice to be able to do that, or change a password, whatever. We are been fortunate that we haven't had too many instances to have to do that, but the
But now we're
times-
going to because you jinxed us.
Oh, we've done it. You know,
That's true.
happened.
It's true.
Yeah.
But yeah, to that point, I mean, it's funny because even that is cloud-based. So it goes to show, I mean, we really are, I would say, pretty much entirely cloud-based.
Yeah, if we have any sort of, so we have separate student and teacher networks at every location.
And a
We-
guest network as well.
And a guest network. And we've had a couple of instances where students end up on the teacher network, which doesn't have any restrictions.
The savvier students.
Right,
Yeah.
right. We haven't had it happen since Fleetsmith, but if that happens again, we can change the password in Arrowhive, change the password that we're pushing out to the computers in Fleetsmith, and then we don't really have to touch anything. Just have to send them to the coffee shop to be on the internet for just a quick second while they receive the updated profile. Any other questions? All right.
Well, thank you guys
Thank
so
you
much.
guys so much. We really appreciate the Q&A, especially. Thanks. Right. 9 minutes to spare.
Thank you so much for the help.